You know, sometimes life throws you moments that don't just shake you up but completely change the way you see everything around you. Moments that creep in so quietly at first, but explode into your world with such force you can't help but question what you thought was real. This story I'm about to share is exactly that kind of moment. It's one of those stories that grabs you by the heart and refuses to let go, because it isn't just about a stranger on the news. It's about someone who looked exactly like the love of my life, my wife. Imagine sitting on your couch, watching the evening news after a long day, and suddenly seeing a victim in a report that could be your wife's twin. So eerily similar, it's impossible to ignore. What would you do? How would you feel? Would your mind race toward every possible explanation, or freeze with disbelief? This isn't just a story for the sake of entertainment. This is a story about fear, confusion, love, and the desperate search for truth. And as you watch this video, I promise you will discover the answers that kept me up at night, the truth behind that terrifying moment, and the shocking reality we uncovered. So stay with me. Don't click away, because everything you think you know will be challenged, and you're about to go on a journey where every second counts. From the very start, I want to connect with you not just as a storyteller, but as someone who's lived through the kind of shock that makes your whole world spin. Because maybe you've had a moment where reality didn't quite make sense, where someone or something you loved seemed suddenly distant, unfamiliar, or even frightening. Maybe you've stared at a screen or a photo and felt your heart drop in a way that words can't fully capture. That's exactly where the story begins, with that sudden, sinking feeling and the confusion that followed. My wife, Emily, had always been a calm, steady presence in my life. The kind of person who lights up the room without trying, who has a laugh that feels like home, and eyes that look straight into your soul. She was everything I could have hoped for. But that evening, as we sat together watching the nightly newscast, her entire world, and mine, turned upside down. When the victim's photo flashed on the screen, Emily's face went pale. Her eyes widened in disbelief. And then, before I could even reach out to her, she fainted right there on the couch. You're probably wondering why someone would faint just by seeing a picture on TV. Was it shock? Trauma? Or was there something far deeper, something terrifying about that victim's face that no one else could see? What was it about that woman on the screen that looked just like Emily but wasn't her? That question haunted me, and it's the question that will drive this entire story. As we dive deeper into what happened next, you're going to meet people who played a part in uncovering a mystery so strange it felt like it belonged in a thriller movie, but this was real life. You'll hear about strange phone calls, unexplained disappearances, and a hidden past that no one expected. The kind of story that twists and turns, keeping you guessing until the very end. But here's what I want you to understand before we go any further. This story isn't just about a woman who fainted or a random victim on the news. It's about identity, trust, and the terrifying idea that sometimes the people closest to us might be hiding secrets that could destroy everything we think we know. When I say this story will keep you on the edge of your seat, I'm not exaggerating. Every single detail matters, and every clue we found only opened up more questions. You may have seen stories online about people being mistaken for others, or cases where someone disappeared without a trace. But this was different. This wasn't a simple case of mistaken identity. It felt like something much darker, much more complex. And that complexity is what makes this story so gripping, so emotionally charged, and so hard to look away from. Because underneath the surface, there's a question we all ask ourselves at some point. How well do we really know the people we love? As you watch, you'll start to notice little things I didn't understand at the time. Strange behaviors, odd coincidences, moments when Emily seemed distracted or nervous. Those small cracks in the facade were the first clues, and now, looking back, they seem like warnings I should have seen coming. But hindsight is always 20/20, and none of us can prepare for the shock of seeing someone who looks exactly like your wife in the middle of a breaking news segment, the victim of something terrible. So, why did Emily faint? What was the connection between her and the woman on TV? And how did we unravel the mystery that led us to a truth stranger than fiction? That's exactly what I'm going to share with you in this video. I'm going to take you through every step of the journey, from that moment of shock through the chaos that followed, to the revelations that left us breathless and changed our lives forever. I want you to stay with me, because this is not just a story about mystery. It's about the kind of human emotions that connect us all: fear, love, betrayal, hope, and the search for answers when the world feels like it's falling apart. You'll see how one moment can fracture everything, but also how determination and love can push us to uncover even the darkest secrets. And let me be clear, if you've ever felt scared by the unknown, if you've ever wondered what happens when the people you trust suddenly seem like strangers, this story will hit close to home. I'm sharing this because I believe it matters, and because I want you to experience the same journey of discovery and hope that we went through. So buckle up, because the story you're about to hear is not for the faint of heart. It's a story of shock, mystery, and an emotional roller coaster that you won't forget. And it all started the moment my wife fainted when she saw the newscast, the moment everything changed forever. Right now, you might be asking yourself, what could have possibly been so shocking about a news report that it made someone faint? The answer is wrapped up in that victim's face, so eerily like Emily's it was impossible to ignore. But there's more to this than just a simple resemblance. What we discovered next will make you question reality, identity, and the very fabric of trust in relationships. I don't want to give away too much just yet, because the truth unfolds piece by piece, like a puzzle where every fragment is crucial. But here's a little hint. The victim's story was tangled up with ours in ways I never could have imagined, and that connection was both terrifying and heartbreaking. From that moment on, life seemed to spin in slow motion, each day stretching longer than the last as I tried to piece together how everything could have gone so wrong without me noticing. Before that night, things felt normal, or at least as normal as any marriage can be when the world itself is so unpredictable. Emily and I had settled into our little routine, juggling work, household chores, and the occasional weekend getaway to escape the city's noise. We had a circle of friends we trusted, neighbors who smiled when we passed by, and a life that seemed safe and familiar. But beneath that calm surface, subtle cracks had started to appear, things I now realize I overlooked or dismissed as nothing more than everyday stress. She had been quieter lately, distracted in a way that didn't quite fit her usual self, but I told myself it was just work pressure or maybe fatigue. After all, who hasn't had those days when their mind is elsewhere? But now I wonder if those small signs were more than just stress. They might have been the first hints of something much darker lurking beneath. In the weeks before that night, Emily had been receiving strange phone calls. Calls she never mentioned to me, and when I asked, she brushed them off with vague answers, claiming they were from some work contacts or old friends she hadn't spoken to in a while. But the way she clutched her phone, her sudden silences when I walked into the room, and that distant look in her eyes made me suspect there was more to the story. I didn't push too hard because I wanted to trust her, to believe that whatever was happening was nothing serious. Yet, in hindsight, that hesitation was a mistake I would come to regret. There were also moments when she seemed restless at night, waking up in the middle of the darkness, staring at the ceiling as if fighting with thoughts she couldn't shake. I tried to comfort her, to ask what was wrong, but she would always say, "Nothing, just tired." Now, when I look back, I wonder if the woman we saw on that newscast, the victim who looked like her, was somehow connected to those strange behaviors. Was it possible that Emily was hiding something from me? Or worse, was someone watching her, threatening her in ways I couldn't even begin to understand? The truth is, as the days passed, the line between reality and suspicion blurred, and I found myself questioning everyone around us. Friends we'd known for years suddenly seemed to have hidden motives, neighbors whose friendly smiles felt more like masks, and even my own instincts that told me to be careful but left me unsure of what to believe. One person in particular caught my attention: Jason, Emily's coworker and close friend. He was always around, sometimes a bit too much, and there were whispers I heard from people at work about a falling out between him and Emily. Nothing concrete, just rumors of disagreements and secrets that made me wonder if he knew more than he let on. I tried to talk to Emily about it, but she would quickly change the subject or avoid answering altogether. It was as if there was a wall between us, one I couldn't break through no matter how hard I tried. Then there was the neighbor, Mrs. Carter, who always seemed overly interested in our comings and goings. She would make casual remarks about Emily's schedule or who came to visit, and while I initially dismissed it as nosiness, after the newscast incident, her presence felt more unsettling than ever. Could she have been watching us, maybe even involved in whatever was unfolding? The police investigation only added to the confusion. When I reached out to the authorities about the woman who looked like Emily, their answers were vague and their files seemed incomplete. The victim's identity was confirmed, but no one could explain the resemblance or why the circumstances felt so personal to me. It was almost like a puzzle missing key pieces, each one essential to seeing the full picture. As I dug deeper, I stumbled upon information that suggested the victim was involved in activities Emily had never mentioned, a past she had kept hidden or perhaps tried to escape. There were mentions of a different name, locations I didn't recognize, and connections to people we'd never met. Every new lead seemed to open a door to another mystery, making it impossible to tell who was friend and who might be foe. At times, I even questioned my own memory, wondering if the woman I knew as Emily was really the same person, or if the woman on the news was a dark reflection of a past that had somehow caught up to her. The tension in our home grew unbearable. Emily's fainting spell was just the beginning, the first sign that the walls were closing in. She started locking herself in rooms, avoiding phone calls, and becoming increasingly withdrawn. I felt powerless, caught in a storm of questions and fear that seemed to have no end. Was the victim on TV someone from her past? Was Emily in danger? Or was this all a coincidence, a cruel twist of fate? Every theory seemed as terrifying as the next. But one thing was clear. The truth was buried somewhere beneath layers of deception, and uncovering it meant facing things I wasn't sure I was ready for. If you've ever been caught in a situation where the people you love start to feel like strangers, where the safety of home turns into a maze of secrets, then you know the kind of fear I'm talking about. It's the kind that keeps you awake at night, turning over every detail, looking for clues in the smallest things, a misplaced item, a whispered conversation, a shadow at the window. That's the world I found myself living in, and it's the world I want you to understand as we continue this story together. Because what happened next wasn't just a mystery to solve. It was a journey into the unknown, a test of trust, and a fight for the truth that would change everything. Just when I thought I was finally getting close to understanding what was going on, everything started to slip through my fingers like sand. It's one thing to uncover strange coincidences or hidden secrets, but it's another to have the truth literally pulled away from you when you're so close you can almost touch it. One night, after spending hours going through documents and photos related to the victim, the woman who looked just like Emily, I left a crucial folder on the kitchen table, hoping to study it again the next morning. But when I woke up, the folder was gone. No trace of it anywhere. Not in the usual spots, not in any drawers, not even under the couch cushions. It was as if it had vanished into thin air. At first, I thought maybe I misplaced it or Emily had tidied up, but she was asleep in the next room, and there was no sign she had been in the kitchen at all. The more I thought about it, the more uneasy I felt. Who else could have come into our home and taken it?
And why?
That night, a chilling phone call shattered what little calm I had left. The voice on the other end was low and cold, warning me in no uncertain terms to stop digging deeper. Some stones are better left unturned, the stranger said before hanging up abruptly. The number was blocked, of course, and no matter how many times I tried to trace it, it led nowhere. That call wasn't just a warning, it was a threat, a reminder that someone powerful was watching and didn't want me to find out the truth. Suddenly, the mystery wasn't just about identity or past secrets. It became a fight for safety, for control over the narrative that was quickly spiraling out of reach. It was around this time that I began noticing subtle but disturbing changes in Emily's behavior. She was more guarded, often checking over her shoulder or jumping at sounds I didn't even hear. One evening, she confided in me, in a voice barely above a whisper, about a hidden chapter in her past that she had never shared with anyone, not even me. A betrayal so deep that it still haunted her. Years ago, before we met, she had been involved with someone dangerous, someone who didn't want her to walk away. She never named names, but the fear in her eyes was unmistakable. The woman on the newscast, it seemed, was somehow tied to that dark period, maybe a friend, maybe an enemy, or maybe a tragic reflection of what Emily had escaped. But if that was true, it raised the terrifying possibility that whoever was behind all this wasn't finished with her. As I tried to piece these things together, a surprising figure entered the story: Mark, a mutual friend who had always seemed loyal and supportive. He offered to help, saying he knew people who could dig into the victim's background and uncover hidden records. At first, I welcomed his involvement, but as days passed, subtle doubts crept in. Mark was overly eager to steer the investigation in certain directions, dismissing leads I thought were important and acting nervous whenever I asked questions about his own connections. Was he genuinely trying to help, or was he playing a double game? The trust one had in him began to crumble, and with every interaction, the web of suspicion grew thicker. In a world where allies and enemies looked identical, every gesture, every word, felt like a potential trap. Then came the strangest part: a piece of evidence that should have cleared everything up, a phone Emily had hidden away, containing messages that could explain the entire mystery, suddenly went missing. I had seen it just days before, tucked in a drawer, but when I searched for it again, it was gone. No sign of forced entry or theft, which only made it more confusing. Was someone in our circle sabotaging the search for answers? Or was Emily herself trying to bury the past deeper, protecting herself from truths too painful to face? The lines between protection and deception blurred in ways I never anticipated. Every step forward seemed to come with 2 steps back. The deeper I dug, the more I realized that the story I thought I knew was just a surface hiding a maze of secrets, betrayals, and dangers I wasn't prepared for. The woman on the newscast wasn't just a stranger. She was a symbol of a past that refused to stay buried, a past that threatened to unravel everything we had built. And with every unanswered question, the stakes grew higher, not just for me or Emily, but for everyone connected to this mystery. So here I am, caught in the middle of a storm where nothing is what it seems, with missing evidence, veiled threats, and people whose loyalty I can no longer trust. The truth feels just out of reach, hidden behind walls of silence and fear. But I'm not giving up, not yet. Because if I stop now, the real story, the one that explains why my wife fainted at that newscast, will stay buried forever. Just as I thought the nightmare was something only Emily and I were trapped in, the darkness began to creep into the lives of those closest to us, twisting the mystery into something even more tangled and dangerous. It started with a text message that popped up on my phone late one night, a cryptic warning not meant for me but for someone I cared about deeply, my younger sister, Sarah. She had been living across the country, miles away from all of this chaos, and until then, she was blissfully unaware of the storm brewing back home. The message was brief but chilling. Stop asking questions, or you'll regret it. It was unsigned, but the threat was unmistakable. What frightened me the most was knowing that Sarah hadn't done anything, at least nothing related to this nightmare as far as I knew. So why was she being pulled into the web of threats and secrecy? Was it a warning meant to pressure me into silence? Or was there something more sinister tying her to the whole mess? The next day, I called her, trying to piece together if she had noticed anything unusual or received other strange communications. She confessed she'd been followed on her way to work, shadowed by a figure she couldn't identify, and felt eyes watching her from the shadows. Suddenly, the lines separating our worlds blurred, and the stakes skyrocketed. This wasn't just about Emily anymore. The danger was spreading, infecting the lives of everyone who dared to get close to the truth. I felt an overwhelming responsibility to protect Sarah, even while my own world was collapsing beneath me. But if that wasn't enough, just as I was grappling with protecting my sister, a new piece of evidence surfaced that turned everything on its head. A faded photograph slipped into the back of an old book I'd found in Emily's belongings. It was a picture of Emily with another woman I didn't recognize, taken years ago in a place that didn't ring any bells. What made the photo unsettling was a small detail, a tattoo on the other woman's wrist, one I had seen before but couldn't place until now. It was the same tattoo the victim on the newscast had. Suddenly, The possibility that Emily and this woman had crossed paths in some hidden, shadowy part of their past wasn't just speculation, it was fact. Yet the more I tried to dig into this connection, the more contradictions I found. Friends who claimed to know Emily said they'd never seen or heard of the woman in the photo, and Emily herself had no explanation, brushing it off as a random acquaintance. But the tattoo and the eerily similar faces told a different story, one that suggested a shared secret, and maybe a betrayal buried deep beneath the surface. At this point, I couldn't help but start questioning everyone around me. Even those I trusted implicitly seemed to be hiding pieces of the puzzle, their motives wrapped in shadows I couldn't yet unravel. Mark, who once appeared to be a trusted ally, became increasingly elusive, dodging questions and avoiding meetings. Friends I thought were loyal suddenly had gaps in their stories or suspicious silences when I pressed for details. And Emily, my wife, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone, was becoming a stranger, locked away behind walls of secrecy that I had no idea how to breach. The chilling reality settled in that in this game of shadows, there were no clear heroes or villains, only players with hidden agendas, each step deeper dragging me further into a labyrinth where trust was a currency far too expensive to afford. Meanwhile, the police investigation that I had hoped would bring clarity only added confusion. Officials seemed hesitant to share information, and some leads I'd hoped would reveal the truth instead fizzled out mysteriously. Reports contradicted each other, timelines clashed, and evidence I thought was solid suddenly became questionable. It was as if someone was deliberately muddying the waters, keeping the real story buried under layers of deception. I started to wonder if the people who should have been helping were themselves caught up in a web of corruption or fear. And with every unanswered question, every dead end, the danger felt more palpable, creeping closer, wrapping tighter around all of us. As the tension escalated, so did the eerie coincidences. Strange cars parked outside our home at odd hours, unfamiliar faces lurking just out of sight, and cryptic notes slipped under doors warning us to stop looking. The sense that we were being watched, controlled, and manipulated became impossible to shake. Every phone call, every knock at the door was a reminder that the truth came at a cost, and someone was determined to keep it hidden, even if it meant destroying everything and everyone in their path. This secondary thread, woven tightly with the original mystery, showed me that what I thought was a simple case of mistaken identity or a tragic accident was actually part of a much larger, more dangerous story. The stakes weren't just about uncovering a past or clearing a name. They were about survival, loyalty, and confronting betrayals that cut deeper than I ever imagined. And with every twist and turn, I found myself questioning not only who I could trust, but also what I was willing to risk to get to the truth. The sense of unease that had been quietly building over the past weeks finally exploded into something darker, something I couldn't ignore no matter how much I tried to convince myself otherwise. It started subtly, a shadow lingering just a little too long outside our window, the feeling of eyes watching me when I thought I was alone, but it quickly escalated into a nightmare I couldn't escape. One evening, I left work late, the streets nearly empty as I walked to my car, when I noticed a figure slipping behind me, keeping pace just far enough to stay out of sight but close enough that my skin crawled with the realization I was being followed. Every step I took echoed louder in my mind, each glance over my shoulder revealing nothing but the empty street. Yet, the pounding in my chest told the truth. I wasn't alone, and whoever was trailing me didn't intend to make their presence known. Not yet. I tried to shake the feeling, telling myself it might be paranoia fueled by the chaos that had become my life since that newscast. But deep down, I knew better. The threats, the vanished evidence, the strange messages meant something. They were warnings, pieces of a puzzle that screamed danger. I thought of Emily, whose fading presence haunted our home more than ever, and of Sarah, who had suddenly become entangled in this nightmare from thousands of miles away. The weight of responsibility pressed down on me, each passing day tightening the noose around everyone I loved. And then, just when the tension felt unbearable, the unthinkable happened. Sarah disappeared. One day, she simply stopped answering calls, texts, and emails. Her apartment was empty when I reached out to her friends. No sign she'd left town or made any plans. The police told me to be patient, that sometimes people need time away, but I couldn't shake the sinking feeling that her disappearance was no accident. The message, the shadowing, the growing silence, they all pointed to the same horrifying conclusion. Someone was silencing her, trying to cut off anyone who dared get too close to the truth. Fear turned into frantic desperation as I realized that whatever shadow was stalking me wasn't content to remain in the background. It was moving in, targeting those closest to me, drawing lines of control and intimidation that I had no idea how to fight. At night, sleep became a stranger, replaced by restless hours of scanning my surroundings, double-checking locks, and replaying every conversation, every moment where I might have missed a clue. The paranoia crept in, not as a fleeting thought but as a constant companion whispering that trust was a dangerous luxury, that every ally could be a potential enemy, wearing a familiar face. I thought about Mark, whose hesitation and evasiveness now felt more like calculated avoidance. Was he protecting Emily, or was he part of the darkness closing in around us? And what about the victim on the newscast? Was she just a tragic casualty of this sinister web, or was her death a message, a warning etched in blood? The questions churned endlessly, tangled with the gnawing fear that the answers would only bring more pain. I found myself walking a knife's edge between hope and despair, desperate for a breakthrough but terrified of what the truth might reveal. Every creak in the house, every unfamiliar sound outside, sent waves of adrenaline surging through me, and yet I knew I couldn't back down, not when the lives of the people I loved were at stake. This mystery had become more than a puzzle. It was a battle for survival, a race against an unseen enemy who seemed always one step ahead. And the most haunting part was the silence. No face, no name, only shadows and threats and the chilling knowledge that this was far from over. So here I am, caught in a nightmare where the past and present collide, where trust is shattered and danger lurks in every corner. The woman who fainted at the newscast still haunts me. The missing sister weighs heavy on my heart, and the threats grow louder with every passing day. The story is far from solved, and the deeper I dig, the more I realize that the truth might be something darker than I ever imagined. What lies ahead is unknown, but one thing is clear. The nightmare has only just begun, and no one is safe until the shadows are finally brought to light. Just when I thought the pieces were falling into place, when the dark maze seemed to have a pattern I could follow, the entire story twisted into something I never saw coming, something that made me question everything I thought I knew about Emily, about the victim, and about myself. It happened late one night, the kind of night when the silence feels heavier than usual, and the weight of all the unanswered questions crushes down like a physical force. I got a call, not from a stranger, not from some anonymous number, but from Emily herself. Her voice was trembling, quieter than I'd ever heard, but the words she spoke shattered every assumption I'd made so far. She confessed that the woman on the newscast wasn't a victim in the traditional sense. She was someone who had been part of a dangerous secret life, one Emily had tried desperately to escape and erase from her past. But the real shock wasn't that. It was what she told me next, that the victim was actually Emily's identical twin sister, a sister she had kept hidden from me and everyone else for years. I sat there, heart pounding, struggling to breathe as the truth crashed over me like a tidal wave. The idea that Emily had a twin I never knew about changed the entire narrative. Suddenly, everything, the fainting, the threats, the missing evidence, made sense in a way that was both terrifying and heartbreaking. The twin had lived a shadow life, tangled in dangerous affairs and people who wouldn't hesitate to silence her. Emily had left that life behind, hoping the past would stay buried, but the newscast had ripped open old wounds and pulled us into a storm we had no control over. What scared me even more was the realization that the twins' life and death weren't just tragic. They were a message, a warning aimed directly at Emily. And, by extension, at me. But the real twist came when Emily revealed that Mark, the friend I had started doubting, was not just a casual acquaintance. He was someone from that hidden past, someone sent to watch over her, to keep her safe in his own twisted way. His loyalty wasn't simple or pure. It was tangled with fear, guilt, and the complicated mess of old debts and threats. This new layer made me question every interaction, every moment where I thought Mark was helping because maybe he was also a prisoner of this secret life, trapped between protecting Emily and the very people who wanted to destroy her. In that moment, everything I believed, the truth I thought I was chasing, felt like a lie crafted to keep me in the dark. The woman who fainted was not just my wife. She was a survivor of a past that refused to stay silent, and the mystery wasn't just about uncovering a crime. It was about confronting a hidden history filled with betrayal, danger, and family secrets that could tear us apart. The stakes had just gone from frightening to unbearable, and the question was no longer if we could solve the mystery, but if we could survive the fallout. The revelation about Emily's twin sister shattered any illusion I had of control, but it also forced me into a position I never wanted to be in, standing face to face with the people closest to me and demanding answers, while knowing that every word could push us deeper into danger. The lines between friend and foe blurred even more sharply as I realized that trust had become the most fragile thing in my life. There was no turning back now. I had to confront Mark, the man I once considered an ally, but who now felt like a shadow lurking just out of reach, holding pieces of the truth I desperately needed. When I confronted him, the air between us thick with tension, he didn't deny his connection to Emily's past. Instead, he gave me an ultimatum that felt like a punch to the gut. Stop digging, walk away from the past, or risk losing everything, including Emily's life. The choice was brutal. Protect the woman I love by silence, or chase the truth and watch everything unravel. That ultimatum wasn't just a warning. It was a trap wrapped in care, a twisted love that demanded sacrifice. My heart screamed to protect Emily, but my mind refused to accept living in fear or ignorance. The emotional weight of that moment crushed me. The idea that my choices could mean the difference between safety and devastation for the people I cared about. At the same time, Emily was slipping further away into herself, haunted by shadows I couldn't fight, burdened by secrets she wasn't ready to face. Watching her wrestle with her past, while I stood at the crossroads of impossible decisions, made every breath heavier, every step harder. But the stakes escalated even further when Sarah reappeared, after days of silence, only to pull me aside with her own confession. She had been threatened, yes, but also coerced into silence by forces I still didn't fully understand. And worse, she revealed a secret I never saw coming. Someone close to us had been feeding information to those shadows all along. The realization that betrayal was not just a theory but a painful, living truth shook me to my core. Who among our circle had betrayed us? And for what reason? The web of deceit was thicker than ever, and I found myself questioning every conversation, every gesture from those I once trusted without hesitation. Now, the lines between right and wrong blurred, and I was trapped in a world where every decision felt like choosing between two devastating outcomes. Could I protect Emily and Sarah without losing myself? Was chasing the truth worth risking their safety? Or was silence a poison that would slowly destroy everything? These impossible choices became the battleground where my fears, hopes, and loyalties clashed violently. The deeper I got, the more I realized that this wasn't just a mystery to solve. It was a test of who I was, how far I was willing to go, and what I could live with once the dust settled. And yet, despite the overwhelming fear and uncertainty, something inside me refused to back down. The stakes were higher than ever, the danger real and relentless, but so was my need to uncover the truth, to peel back the layers of lies and shadows before they swallowed us whole. This story was no longer about a woman who fainted at a newscast or a missing sister. It was about confronting the darkness within the people we love and the choices that define us when everything else falls away. So here I stand, caught between love and fear, truth and survival, knowing that whatever path I choose will change everything, and that the next move could be the most dangerous yet. The nightmare is far from over, and the shadows are closing in faster than I ever imagined. The night I finally confronted the truth felt like stepping into a storm I could neither outrun nor control, the air thick with tension and the weight of everything that had come before pressing down on me like a vice. Every unanswered question, every hidden secret, every betrayal bubbled to the surface in one relentless moment, and there was no going back. I found myself standing in a dimly lit warehouse on the outskirts of town, a place Emily's twin sister had once called a sanctuary and a trap, the crossroads where past and present collided with devastating force. Mark was there, his face a mask of regret and resolve, but more importantly, so was the person I least expected, the real villain who had been pulling strings from the shadows all along, the one who had orchestrated the threats, the disappearances, and the manipulation that had torn my life apart. The confrontation wasn't just a battle of words, it was a clash of wills and truths, raw and unfiltered, where every accusation was a blade and every revelation a wound. The villain revealed the chilling motive behind everything, a twisted family feud, a decades-old secret tied to greed, betrayal, and vengeance that had poisoned generations. Emily's twin had tried to break free, to expose the darkness, and the cost was her life, a sacrifice meant to silence the past forever. The villain's cold justification was like ice in my veins, but it also made the stakes painfully clear. If I backed down now, the cycle of pain would continue, claiming more lives, more secrets buried beneath layers of lies. In that electric moment, I saw Emily standing on the edge of that storm, fragile but fierce, her past and present colliding in her eyes as she stepped forward to face the person who had haunted her life. The air crackled with tension as the three of us stood in that warehouse, each heartbeat echoing like a drum, every second stretching into eternity. I realized this was more than a confrontation. It was a reckoning, a chance to break free from the shadows that had bound us for so long. The villain lunged, desperate to keep control, but Emily, fueled by the pain and strength of years lost, stood her ground. The struggle was raw, physical and emotional, a tempest of betrayal and hope, with me caught in the middle, fighting not just for survival but for the truth that had been stolen from us. Just when it felt like the darkness might finally be broken, the unexpected happened. The villain, defeated and cornered, dropped a final bombshell that shattered what we thought we knew. The twin sister, the woman on the newscast, wasn't just a victim or a pawn. She had been playing a game of her own, hiding secrets deeper than anyone guessed, secrets that could turn the entire story upside down. Suddenly, the line between victim and villain blurred, and the mystery took on a new, unsettling shape. What was her real motive? What had she done that made her a target not just of the villain, but of the very people who should have protected her? The answers slipped away like shadows, leaving us with more questions than ever. The warehouse faded behind us as the night stretched on, but the storm within me was just beginning. The truth was out, but it wasn't simple, clean, or comforting. It was messy, painful, and infinitely more complex than I had ever imagined. And as Emily and I walked away from that confrontation, battered but alive, we knew that the past would always be there, whispering in the dark, waiting for the next chapter to unfold. In the quiet aftermath of the storm, as the dust settled and the adrenaline began to fade, I found myself standing at a crossroads that no one warned me about, between holding on to the pain of what we'd uncovered and learning how to live with the shadows it cast. The truth about Emily's twin sister, the twisted motives, the betrayals and threats, all of it had unraveled in ways that left scars deeper than I expected. Yet, somehow, amidst the wreckage, there was a fragile kind of peace taking root. Emily and I began to rebuild, not just our lives, but the trust and hope that had been buried beneath years of silence and fear. It wasn't easy. Some questions had answers, yes, but many remained tangled in uncertainty, reminding me that life rarely offers neat endings. What I did learn is that the past, no matter how dark or dangerous, doesn't have to define us. Sometimes, survival itself is the victory. Sarah returned, physically safe but forever changed, carrying with her the weight of what she'd endured and the understanding that the shadows we'd faced were part of a larger world we couldn't yet fully grasp. The betrayal from within our circle was never fully explained. leaving a lingering question about how deep the corruption went and who might still be watching from the edges. Mark disappeared shortly after the final confrontation, his true loyalties remaining a mystery, whether he was a protector, a pawn, or something in between. I realized that some people enter your life to teach you painful lessons, not to stay forever. What stayed with me most was the memory of that warehouse, the final battle of truth and deception, and the haunting revelation that the twin sister had her own secrets, secrets that blurred the line between victim and villain. It was a reminder that in every story, especially the ones steeped in mystery and danger, there are layers unseen, motives hidden, and truths that even those closest to us might never fully share. That lingering uncertainty is part of what makes the human experience so complex and compelling. As days turned into weeks, I found solace not in answers, but in the journey itself. The way every twist forced me to confront my own fears, to challenge what I thought was real, and to fight for the people I loved despite the chaos. The newscast that once shattered our world became a symbol not just of tragedy, but of resilience, a reminder that behind every headline lies a story far richer, far darker, and far more human than anyone expects. So where do we go from here? The message that blinked on my phone after the final confrontation was a chilling reminder that the past isn't easily left behind and that some shadows never fully fade. But rather than fear it, I've come to understand that living with the unknown is part of what makes life worth telling. Because every mystery, every secret, and every twist shapes us, teaches us, and challenges us to keep moving forward, no matter how uncertain the path. And maybe, just maybe, that's the true story worth sharing.